At my son's wedding, they sat me by the kitchen door like some hired help right next to the trays of ribs and the smell of grease, while laughter from the main hall drowned out my heartbeat. I paid for that celebration, every flower, every song, every damn smile, and still they hid me like I was a stain on their perfect picture. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just watched silent until the last slice of cake was served. And then I made one call that ended it all. Subscribe for more revenge stories and tell me in the comments, what would you have done? There wasn't even a name card waiting for me. Just a folding chair tucked by the service door, the kind that screeches when you pull it out, the kind nobody sits in unless they have to. The smell of fried catfish and sweet tea floated around me, mixing with the noise of plates clinking and laughter spilling from the reception hall. I could hear the music shift from jazz to gospel, the guests clapping, the bride's mother giving her speech like she was royalty. And there I was, sitting in the back, sweating under the kitchen lights, watching waiters rush past like I didn't exist. I had worn my best suit, pressed it that morning myself, even shined the shoes I hadn't worn since Evelyn's funeral. I remember looking in the mirror before leaving the house, telling myself this was going to be a proud day. My only son getting married, starting his own family. That's what I told everyone at church the Sunday before. They all smiled, clapped my shoulder, said, "Brother Carter, you must be proud." And I was. I truly was. Until I saw where they'd put me. No one said a word when I arrived. The bride's family barely looked up from their perfect little seating chart. A young woman from catering pointed to the back. "Right through there, sir," she said, like she was doing me a favor. The kitchen door swung shut behind me, sealing me off from the laughter, from the music, from everything that was supposed to matter. I sat down, folded my hands, and told myself it didn't mean anything. But it did. Every sound from the hall felt like a slap I couldn't block. I could see them through the gap in the door when the servers pushed through. My son Marcus, tall, handsome, beaming like the world had been built just for him. His new wife Tasha, glowing beside him in a white gown I had paid for, smiling at her family like they were the ones who raised him. He didn't look my way once. Not even when the pastor said, "Let's honor the parents who made today possible." They stood, applauded, and I sat in the back with a paper napkin on my lap, my name never spoken. The longer I sat there, the heavier the air felt. Grease from the fryers clung to my clothes. A tray of shrimp passed by, and the smell turned my stomach. I wasn't angry yet, just hollow, like something inside me had cracked open, and nothing was left but the echo. I remembered the nights when Marcus was little, when he'd crawl into my lap after a nightmare, whispering, "Daddy, don't let the bad people get me." I used to tell him, "There are no bad people, son, just folks who forget how to love." I wonder now if that was ever true. A waiter, barely out of high school, stopped and looked at me funny. "You okay, sir?" he asked. I nodded, but my throat was tight. He hesitated, then said, "You can watch from the hall if you want." I almost laughed. Watch what? The parade I wasn't invited to. The first dance I wasn't asked to join. I waved him off. He disappeared back into the noise, and I stayed there alone, listening to the clink of glasses, the clatter of silverware, and the words that cut deeper than any insult could, to new beginnings. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I clasped them together and stared at the floor. The tile was cracked near the drain grease pooled in the corners. Somewhere a timer beeped and someone shouted for more plates. Life went on indifferent to my humiliation. I tried to swallow the anger, tried to be the man my pastor always preached about, the one who turns the other cheek. But even in church, there's a limit to how many times you can be slapped before your soul starts to ache. Through the small window in the swinging door, I caught glimpses of the dance floor. Marcus twirling Tasha under soft lights, both of them glowing with happiness. Her father joined them, laughter rising over the music. Then came her mother, her cousins, her whole family, all of them moving together like a celebration of victory. My chair felt colder. My spine ached from sitting so long, but I didn't move. If I walked out, I'd prove them right that I didn't belong. If I stayed, I'd burn in silence. Either way, I was invisible. I thought about leaving. Getting in my car, driving home, maybe stopping by Reverend Lewis's house. He'd pour me a drink, tell me to let it go, pray over me like he always did. But something told me I needed to stay, that there was more to see, more to understand. I stayed because I wanted to witness the full measure of their forgetting. It's one thing to be left out by strangers. It's another to be erased by your own blood. When the band struck up Stand By Me, I almost laughed again. The irony was cruel. I had stood by that boy through everything: his first heartbreak, his college debts the year he lost his job and moved back home. Every time he needed something, I was there. Every time he said, "I'll pay you back." "Pops," I told him not to worry about it. Love doesn't keep receipts right. But sitting in that kitchen watching him pretend I didn't exist, I realized something: love should still have boundaries. A few of the waiters started whispering, glancing my way. Maybe they felt sorry for me. Maybe they just wanted me gone. One of them, a girl with kind eyes, quietly set a glass of lemonade on the table beside me. "You don't deserve to be back here," she whispered. I looked up, tried to smile. "It's all right," I said. But it wasn't. She nodded and slipped away, leaving the glass sweating on the table like a small act of mercy. The hours dragged. The music changed again. The toast turned into laughter, the laughter into drunken shouts. Someone dropped a plate. Someone else spilled champagne, and the room behind the door kept roaring with celebration. My watch ticked past 11. The cake had been served. The speeches were done. I was still in that chair, still pretending I couldn't hear my own heart breaking. When the kitchen finally quieted, I stood up. My knees cracked. I looked at the empty chair, the dirty plates, the crumbs scattered like confetti no one cared to sweep. I took one last glance through the small window. Marcus was at the bar, arm around his new wife, smiling wide. I could almost hear Evelyn's voice in my head, soft and steady. "Don't let them steal your grace." She always knew how to calm me, even from the grave. So I straightened my tie, took a deep breath, and walked toward the back exit. Outside, the night was cool. The air smelled like magnolias and rain. I didn't drive home right away. I sat in my truck watching the lights of the banquet hall flicker through the trees. My phone buzzed with a message from my neighbor. "How's the wedding, man?" I stared at the screen and typed back, "Unforgettable." Then I turned off the phone and started the engine. What I did next wasn't planned. It just came to me like the quiet pull of justice waiting its turn. The same hands that built that wedding could also take it apart. And by morning, every one of them would learn what it feels like to be forgotten. Through that small rectangle of glass in the swinging kitchen door, I saw my son standing there like the world had been handed to him on a silver platter. Marcus, my boy, my pride, my reason for every early morning and late night shift. He was smiling so wide it almost hurt to look at him. That same smile used to light up my whole world when he was 5 years old, running down the hallway with his church shoes untied, calling Daddy, "Look what I made." Back then, everything he made felt like a blessing. Now, watching him under those golden reception lights, it looked more like betrayal wrapped in a tuxedo. He looked polished, confident, the kind of man folks point to and say, "His daddy raised him right." But no one was saying that now. They didn't know about the years my hands cracked from laying brick in the cold, or the nights I came home too tired to eat but still checked his homework. They didn't see the hospital bills I paid when he broke his arm playing football, or the rent I covered when he lost his first job. All they saw was a success story that didn't include me. I caught the sound of his voice through the music, clear as a bell toasting his new family. "To the people who made me who I am today," he said. The room erupted with cheers. Her father raised his glass. Her mother dabbed her eyes like she'd just witnessed a miracle. And me? I sat in the back of that greasy kitchen, my chest tight, my jaw locked. The man he was talking about might as well have been someone else entirely. The worst part wasn't being forgotten, it was realizing how easy it was for him to forget. like my years of sacrifice were just background noise in his new life. I thought about the summer I worked double shifts at the steel plant, sleeping 4 hours a night, saving every dime so he could go to that fancy college out in North Carolina. I thought about how he'd call home and talk about professors' plans, the big city life ahead. I used to hang up proud thinking my work had meaning. Now that pride burned like acid in my throat. Back then we'd pray together before bed. He'd kneel beside me, hands folded, eyes closed, whispering, "Lord, thank you for Daddy." I used to believe those prayers built something sacred between us, something no distance could break. But faith has a cruel way of testing you when you least expect it. Maybe God wasn't silent that night. Maybe he was teaching me that love without respect is just charity dressed as devotion. Through the door, I saw Marcus wrap his arms around his new wife's parents. They hugged him like he was theirs. Her father said something in his ear, and Marcus laughed loud, carefree, unbothered. That sound used to be music to me. Now it rang hollow, like hearing someone else's child call you Dad. He raised his glass again, the light catching the ring on his finger. My ring. The one I'd given him on his 21st birthday, passed down from my father before me. He'd once said, "I'll wear it with pride, Pops." And here he was, showing it off to everyone except me. I could feel something shifting inside me, slow and sharp like a blade turning. I wasn't just angry. I was grieving a son who was still alive but had buried me in everything but name. Every clap, every laugh from that hall was another shovel of dirt. The longer I listened, the deeper I sank. I turned away from the window, rubbing my palms together to keep from trembling. The skin was rough, calloused proof of a lifetime spent building something solid for a boy who wanted to pretend he made it all himself. I thought of my late wife, Evelyn, and how she used to tell me, "Don't ever let bitterness live in your house, baby. It'll eat the walls down." I used to believe her. But standing there smelling grease and cheap wine, I felt bitterness crawl right up beside me, pull up a chair and make itself at home. A server brushed past, bumping my shoulder, apologizing without meaning it. I barely noticed. My eyes went back to that window, to my son's perfect world. The preacher from our old neighborhood church was there too. He'd married Evelyn and me 40 years ago. He was shaking hands with the bride's parents, smiling wide. He didn't even glance my way. I guess he didn't recognize me without the good suit and the choir robe. I wondered if Marcus even told him I'd be there. Probably not. Then came the song, "Amazing Grace." The band slowed it down, gave it a little blues twist. My throat tightened. I could almost hear Evelyn's voice singing it beside me back when we led the choir together. She'd close her eyes on that last line. "Was blind, but now I see," and she'd squeeze my hand. I felt her ghost that night, standing beside me in that hot kitchen, whispering, "Now do you see, Daniel?" I did. Oh, I saw it clearly. My son wasn't lost. He had simply chosen to walk away. I stepped closer to the door, enough to see the joy painted across his face. He looked so free, so unburdened, like he'd shed every piece of his past that didn't shine under the chandeliers. Maybe in his mind, I didn't fit the picture anymore, the man who wore worn-out boots and worked with his hands. Maybe I was just too much of where he came from and not enough of where he was going. I thought about walking out there, standing beside him, forcing him to look me in the eye, to see what he'd done. But I didn't. Because part of me still wanted him to have his moment, even if it wasn't mine anymore, even if it was built on my silence. When the song ended, I turned back toward my chair, but something inside me refused to sit down. Pride might have been the thing that built him, but it wasn't going to bury me. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The waiters started cleaning up the kitchen, scraping plates, laughing about tips. One of them tossed a half-empty bottle of champagne into the trash, the cork still hanging loose. I picked it up, turned it in my hand, and smiled. It wasn't the drink that mattered. It was the thought. How something once meant for celebration could turn into a reminder of waste. Just like all my years for him. I looked at the clock. Midnight was creeping in. Soon the party would end, and the mess would begin. I pulled out my phone, the same one I'd used to send money for his wedding deposits, and opened my messages. There was his last text. "Thanks, Pops. You're the best. Couldn't have done it without you." I read it twice, then deleted it. I walked out the back door into the night air heavy with the scent of magnolias and rain. My truck was parked under a street light still warm from the sun earlier. I leaned against it, staring at the glowing windows of that hall. I could still hear the laughter, faint but steady. Somewhere inside, my son was still smiling, still forgetting. But I hadn't forgotten a thing. Not the years, not the prayers, not the promises. And as I stood there under the hum of the streetlight, I realized something simple but certain. Some debts can't be repaid with gratitude. They have to be remembered through loss. What came next wasn't revenge, it was revelation. And once it started, there was no going back. The young server couldn't have been more than 20, his white shirt too big, his bow tie crooked. He leaned in, voice trembling like he'd already seen too much that night. "Sir, they asked you to wait back here." I could see the apology in his eyes, the kind that doesn't fix a damn thing. I nodded, slow, steady, like a man agreeing to his own sentence. My voice came out calm, low, controlled, the same tone I used when my world had fallen apart before. When Evelyn's doctor said the word cancer when the mortgage nearly took the house. That tone had saved me once. It would save me again tonight. I didn't ask who they were. I already knew. People like that never say it to your face. They send a messenger, a polite middleman, to soften the cruelty. I told the boy it was fine, thanked him for his honesty. He looked surprised, maybe even relieved, like he'd expected me to lash out. But I've learned over the years that anger is like fire. You don't let it burn too early. You hold it, feed it slow until it's ready to consume. When he left, the door swung shut and the laughter from the reception dimmed to a dull hum. The kitchen lights buzzed overhead, washing everything in pale yellow. I could feel something shift inside me, quiet but certain, like thunder rolling miles away, warning the earth that something was coming. I sat back down on that cold folding chair, folded my hands, and breathed. Every inhale pulled smoke and grease into my lungs. Every exhale took another piece of pride with it. The old me, the one Evelyn used to call the peacemaker, would have swallowed it. He would have smiled, said, "Let them have their moment," and gone home to pray for forgiveness he didn't owe. But that man died the day she did. The one left behind had nothing left to lose but dignity, and that was something I wasn't about to surrender. Through the small window in the kitchen door, I could see Marcus dancing. Not just dancing, glowing. The kind of glow money can't buy, but arrogance can polish. His bride clung to him like she'd found her prize. Her parents hovered close, their smiles wide, self-satisfied. I saw it all in fragments, hands brushing heads, leaning close, that smug kind of joy people wear when they believe the world has chosen them. Then I saw it, the small detail that made my jaw tighten. My father's watch, the one Evelyn made me promise to give Marcus when he was ready. Not when he wanted, but when he earned it. A gold-faced black leather band worn smooth from decades of sweat and prayer. I'd given it to him last month, believing it was a symbol of legacy. But now it gleamed under those wedding lights like another accessory in his new life, another story that no longer included me. I pressed my palms together until my knuckles turned white. There's a kind of rage that doesn't show. It doesn't yell or break things. It just sits there, pulsing like a second heartbeat. That's what I felt then. Not hate, not even sadness, just clarity. A woman from the catering crew dropped a tray near the sink, the crash jolting everyone in the kitchen. "Sorry," she stammered. I didn't move. My eyes were still locked on that window, on my son's laughter. The sound was too loud, too clean, like it had been rehearsed. I could almost hear Evelyn whispering again, her voice soft but firm. "Don't let them take your grace." I didn't plan to. But grace, I realized, didn't mean silence anymore. I stood up, brushed off my suit, and straightened my tie. The mirror by the freezer caught my reflection. My hair had gone grayer than I remembered, the lines around my eyes deeper. But my gaze, that hadn't changed. It was the same look I gave Marcus the day I told him the truth about responsibility. When a man gives you his word, that's his bond, I'd said. Break it and you break yourself. I walked toward the small back hallway that led to the reception area. The air grew cooler, the lights dimmer. Every step echoed against the tile. Through the crack in the door I saw the crowd circling my son and his bride. Someone clinked a glass, calling for another toast. Her father stood raising his drink. "To family," he said. The word hit me like a slap. Family. I thought of Evelyn's laughter, the way she used to sing while frying chicken on Sundays. I thought of the smell of her perfume when she hugged Marcus goodbye for college. I thought of the nights she'd cry, quietly worried he'd forget where he came from. I'd always tell her, "He won't. He's got your heart." But now, watching him, I realized I'd been wrong. He had her smile, maybe even her charm, but her heart, that belonged to the highest bidder. The toast ended, applause, laughter again. Then the DJ switched tracks, an upbeat song, something about love and forever. The lights flashed. People danced, glasses clinked. And me. I turned around and walked back to my chair. My heart had slowed to a steady, deliberate beat. The storm was forming now, quiet and sure, waiting for the right moment to strike. I sat down, pulled out my phone, and opened my notes. Every expense for this wedding was listed there. The venue deposit, the florist, the band, the catering, the brunch. My name was on every invoice, every check, every transfer. I scrolled slowly, each number reminding me of what I had given, what I had built, and now what I was about to undo. I closed the phone, tucked it into my pocket, and exhaled. There's a calm that comes right before a storm breaks, the kind that feels almost holy. That's where I was. Not angry, not broken, just still. The kitchen door swung open again. The same young server peeked in, nervous. "Sir, they're about to cut the cake. You can come out now if you want." I looked up at him and smiled. "No," I said quietly. "I'll wait." He hesitated, nodded, and disappeared again. I could hear the clapping, the music rising. My son's voice cut through it all, bright and easy. "To new beginnings," he shouted. Everyone cheered. And there it was, the exact moment the last thread of restraint inside me snapped, not in rage, but in decision. I straightened my cuffs, brushed a crumb from my lapel, and reached for my phone one last time. I opened my contacts, thumb hovering over a name I hadn't used since the planning began, the coordinator. My hand didn't shake. My pulse didn't race. I hit call. "Cancel the brunch," I said. My voice was even. "Cancel the band. Cancel the bar. And make sure they know who paid for every damn bit of it." When I hung up, the thunder inside me finally went silent. Outside, applause burst again, muffled by the kitchen door. But this time, I didn't look through the glass. I didn't need to. The storm had already begun, and by morning they'd feel the rain. The band started playing louder, the kind of song meant to fill every inch of the room, to drown out any silence that might reveal the truth. Through the small glass window in the kitchen door, I could see them raising their glasses. Her family, her friends, people who'd known my son for less than a year, calling him the best man they'd ever met. The words hit me like gravel against skin. Not one mention of the man who taught him how to stand tall, how to work honest, how to pray when life cornered you. Not one. I waited for it. For just a nod, a glance toward the back of the hall. Nothing. My chest tightened until breathing felt like lifting bricks. It wasn't an oversight. It wasn't some innocent mistake. No one forgets their father by accident. This was a choice, a clean-cut, deliberate, and practiced. Marcus had built himself a new story, one that didn't include the man who poured the foundation beneath it. Watching him laugh among strangers, I realized something had cracked deep inside me, not just in my heart, but in my faith. Not in God, never him, but in the promise I'd once believed about blood and loyalty. When Evelyn was alive, she used to say, "Family is the circle you build around your heart, baby. You keep it strong, you keep it safe." I thought I'd done that. I worked hard, gave my boy a life that was bigger than mine, and I believed he'd protect that circle the way we did. But standing there invisible behind the kitchen door, I saw it plain as day. He'd drawn a new circle, one where I didn't fit. I leaned against the counter, the cool metal biting through my jacket. Somewhere in the hall, a woman's voice rose in laughter, sharp and shrill, the kind that makes your skin itch. I could see her now, the bride's mother, tall, confident, wearing pearls that caught the light every time she moved. She was talking about how Marcus has such drive, such ambition. Her husband chimed in, "He's everything a man should be." And there I was, the man who taught him what that meant, standing on the other side of the wall like a ghost they'd already buried. The sound of a glass clinking pulled me back. The bride herself was giving a toast. Now her hand looped through my son's arm, her voice sweet and deliberate. "To the people who shaped the man I married," she said, pausing for dramatic effect. I held my breath. Maybe this was it. Maybe she'd say my name. To my parents, she continued, smiling, eyes glossy with tears, for showing me what real love looks like. Laughter, applause, hugs. No mention of me. Not even a glance. My heart felt too big for my chest, swelling with a pressure that had nowhere to go. The air in the kitchen felt heavier, thicker, like I was standing underwater. I reached for the glass of lemonade the young waitress had left earlier, but it had gone warm. I set it back down untouched. My throat was dry, but it wasn't thirst. It was silence choking me. There's a moment when pain turns to clarity. It doesn't scream. It doesn't shout. It just arrives cold and clean. That's what hit me then. I'd been living off old faith, old promises, the kind that sound noble but die in the real world. I believed that hard work and sacrifice earned love, that being steady, kind, dependable made you unforgettable. But people forget steady. They forget kind. What they remember is who shines under the lights, not who built the damn stage. My mind wandered to the small Baptist church on Jefferson Street where I used to kneel with Marcus, his little hand tucked in mine. We'd sit in the same pew every Sunday. Pastor Jenkins used to say, "A father's love is a mirror of the Lord's patience." Back then I thought I understood that. Tonight, patience felt like weakness. I wanted to smash that mirror to pieces, let the shards show what a father's love really looks like when it's trampled on. The speeches rolled on one after another, each word cutting a little deeper. Every compliment they gave him sounded like a confession of how completely he'd erased me. I saw her father slap him on the back, laughing like they'd known each other all their lives. He leaned in close, said something that made my son grin. Then he reached into his jacket and handed Marcus something, a key. The crowd cheered. I couldn't hear the details, but I knew that look. Pride, ownership, reward. They were giving him something. Maybe a car, maybe property. Whatever it was, it sealed the deal. My son wasn't just marrying into a new family. He was trading me for one. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. A message from Deacon Williams from the church. "Hope the wedding's beautiful, Brother Carter. God bless you both." I stared at it for a long time before locking the screen. Blessings felt hollow tonight. For the first time I wanted to leave, to just walk out, disappear before the hurt turned to something uglier. But my legs wouldn't move. I stayed because I needed to see the truth with both eyes open. I needed to let it burn through me so I'd never doubt it again. The music shifted again, soft, slow, intimate. The first dance. The crowd formed a circle around them. The lights dimmed to gold. She rested her head on his shoulder, her smile tender, her lips whispering something only he could hear. He laughed again, that easy laugh I used to love. My chest ached so bad I pressed my hand against it. For a second I thought it might stop beating. Then something strange happened. I didn't feel anger anymore. Not rage. Not even grief. Just a kind of calm that scared me with its stillness. Because once that calm comes, you know you've crossed over. You're not begging to be seen anymore. You're preparing to be remembered differently. The pastor stepped to the mic saying something about blessings for the new couple, the power of love, the bond of family. I almost laughed at that word again, family. It sounded foreign now, like a song in a language I used to speak. The crowd started chanting for them to kiss. The flash of cameras lit up the hall like lightning. In one of those flashes through that narrow glass window, I caught Marcus's eyes for the first time that night. He looked right at me. Just a second long enough for recognition to flicker, then fade. He turned away before I could even blink. That was the final proof I needed. This wasn't misunderstanding. It wasn't pride or nerves. It was a choice. And if he could choose to forget me, then I could choose something too. The night wasn't over yet. The storm I'd been holding was ready, waiting, patient. What came next wouldn't be loud, but it would echo. Forever. I had swallowed disrespect my whole life, neighbors who forgot the help I gave them, friends who disappeared when they didn't need favors anymore, and even family who treated my patience like weakness. I'd let it slide. I told myself that humility was strength, that silence kept the peace. But watching my son raise his glass under those gold lights, toasting a family that wasn't mine, I knew silence had done nothing but turn me invisible. That night I decided I wasn't disappearing anymore. I stood up slow, feeling the ache in my knees, the stiffness in my back. Years of labor, years of sacrifice, all sitting in my bones like unspoken truths. I straightened my jacket and adjusted my tie, a small motion, but it felt like armor sliding into place. The kitchen's hum faded, replaced by something heavier, my own pulse steady and certain. I'd spent a lifetime teaching Marcus to pray before every meal, to thank the Lord for the hands that fed him. Tonight I realized those hands deserved more than quiet gratitude. They deserved respect. Through the window I saw him spinning his new wife across the floor, smiling like the world had only ever been kind to him. His laughter rolled out warm and easy, the same laugh that used to fill our old house when he was a boy. It should have made me proud. Instead, it cut through me like glass. Because that joy, the confidence in his posture, the light in his eyes came from lessons I taught him. It was my faith, my discipline, my sweat that built the foundation he stood on. And somehow, I'd been erased from the story. I thought about every late bill I paid when he was too young to understand money. Every Sunday I worked overtime, missing services, just to keep food on the table. I thought about Evelyn, her tired hands clasped in prayer beside me, whispering, "God sees Daniel, even when people don't." For years that had been enough. Tonight it wasn't. The sound of applause snapped me back. The dance ended. The MC took the mic, voice booming. "Let's give it up for the new Mr. and Mrs. Carter." The crowd roared. Someone whistled, and then I heard it. Her father's voice, loud and proud. "You've got a good man there, son." He called my son son. That one word lit a fuse inside me. My hands clenched, but my face stayed still. My anger wasn't the wild kind. It was righteous, measured clean. The kind that comes from knowing you've been wronged by the very person you raised. I walked toward the back door that led to the hall. A young caterer moved to stop me, panic flickering in his eyes. "Sir, they're still taking photos." I gave him a look that froze his words midair. He stepped aside. I didn't blame him. He was just another kid doing what he was told. I pushed open the door just enough to see the stage. The smell of champagne hit me first, sweet and sharp, mixing with the faint trace of perfume. Flashbulbs popped. Laughter rolled through the air like thunderclouds gathering. My gaze locked on Marcus. He stood tall, confident, arm wrapped around his new family. He looked like a man who thought he'd outrun his roots. For a second I wondered if he'd feel my stare. He didn't. He didn't even look my way. Then the pastor took the mic for the final blessing. His voice echoed across the room, full of ceremony. "May this union bring peace, prosperity, and honor to both families." Both families. I almost laughed out loud. Only one family had been mentioned all night. Mine had been treated like a rumor. I stepped back into the kitchen, the door swinging shut behind me. The staff was cleaning up now, scraping plates, stacking trays, pretending not to notice me. I moved to the corner, sat for a moment, then pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the contact list florist caterer band venue. Every one of them had my number saved under Daniel Carter. Every bill paid in full, every arrangement made personally. I opened the message thread with the wedding planner. Our last exchange glowed on the screen. "We'll make sure everything runs perfectly, Mr. Carter." I typed slowly, deliberately. "End the open bar at midnight. Cancel the brunch. Cancel the decorator's balance." My hand didn't shake. I pressed send and felt something deep inside me settle. It wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. For years I'd built my life around peacekeeping, believing forgiveness was strength. But forgiveness without respect isn't grace, it's surrender. I'd done enough of that for one lifetime. The kitchen lights flickered, once briefly dimming like the world itself paused to take notice. Outside I could hear the laughter turning a little louder, a little sloppier, as the night wore on. Soon they'd realize what was happening. The open bar closed early, the brunch canceled, the photographer unpaid. My silence had funded their celebration. My voice had just ended it. I walked outside into the night air, the cool breeze wrapping around me like a blessing I hadn't asked for. The parking lot was empty except for my old truck parked under a flickering light. I leaned against it, pulled a cigarette from the pack I hadn't touched in years, and lit it. The first drag burned sharp and satisfying. I hadn't smoked since Evelyn died, but tonight the smoke felt like company. I watched the hall's windows from a distance. The music still played, but something had changed. I could see the coordinator moving fast, whispering in someone's ear. The bride's mother's smile faltered. The tension spread like ripples on water. Marcus turned his head, confusion creasing his perfect face. I exhaled slowly, watching the smoke curl into the dark. There was no pleasure in it, just peace. I thought of all the times I'd taught him about legacy. How a man's word was his promise, how the way you treat people who love you defines your character. He must have forgotten that part. But the Lord has his ways of reminding the proud. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a call from an unknown number. I didn't need to answer to know who it was. I let it ring. Then another text appeared. "Dad, what's going on?" I stared at it, thumb hovering. I could have written 1,000 things. But I didn't. I just typed, "Now you remember who made the calls." I slipped the phone back in my pocket and looked up at the sky. The clouds were rolling in heavy and dark, just like I knew they would. Somewhere inside that building, my son was learning that respect isn't given by marriage or money. It's earned, and once lost, it's hell to get back. I flicked the cigarette into the dirt, watched the ember die, and climbed into the truck. The engine turned over with a low growl. I sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, the weight of the night settling around me. This wasn't the end. Not yet. The storm hadn't broken, but it was close. And when it came, they'd all remember the man they tried to forget. The phone felt heavy in my hand, not from weight, but from meaning. I'd held that same phone through birthdays, doctor's calls, job offers, and the night Evelyn's voice faded from the other side of the line. But this time, it wasn't grief or worry that made my heart beat slow, it was clarity. The kind of stillness that comes when you finally stop trying to fix what refuses to see your worth. I opened the contact labeled coordinator. Sandra took one breath and pressed call. She picked up on the second ring, her voice chipper still caught in the high of the celebration. "Mr. Carter, everything looks beautiful tonight, doesn't it?" My answer came smooth, even the way cold water cuts through heat. "Cancel the brunch, cancel the band, cancel the bar." There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath. "Sir, I'm not sure I cut her off. It's over. The cards are under my name. The contracts too. Shut it all down." The silence on her end was thick, awkward, frightened. Then a hesitant, "Of course, Mr. Carter. Right away." I hung up before she could say anything else. No shouting, no explanation, just 3 sentences sharp as glass. For the first time in years, my hands didn't tremble. They were steady, grounded, sure. I looked down at them, the same hands that had poured concrete signed checks held my son when he was too small to stand. Tonight they weren't shaking from anger or age. They were steady with purpose. Power had finally come home to me. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, the air too heavy. I stepped outside, letting the cool night air wash over me. The sky was a deep blue-black stars hiding behind clouds that promised rain. Somewhere inside that hall, laughter still floated unknowing. But it wouldn't last long. Soon the music would cut, the drinks would stop flowing, and people would start asking questions. I leaned against the brick wall, listening to the muffled thump of the bass through the walls. It reminded me of the sound of a heartbeat, one that was about to flatline. I imagined it, the confusion, spreading like wildfire. The coordinator rushing to the bride's mother, whispering in her ear. The panic tightening her perfect posture. The groom, my son, turning clueless, asking what's wrong. And then it would begin. The small unraveling of a night built on my silence. The bar closing early. The band packing up mid-song. The brunch canceled before a single mimosa could be poured. Every piece of this day had been built by my hands, funded by my labor. And just as easily I could take it all away. I didn't feel guilty. Not even close. Guilt is for the ones who did wrong, not the ones who finally draw the line. For years I'd been feeding a tree that grew away from me, its branches reaching for other skies. Tonight I'd cut it clean. I walked toward the parking lot, each step slow, deliberate. My truck sat under a flickering streetlight, the same one I'd driven for 20 years. I opened the door, slid into the seat, and let the quiet settle around me. My reflection stared back from the rearview mirror, older, harder, but not defeated. No, there was something new there. Something I hadn't seen in years. Peace. It was a strange kind of peace, the kind that comes not from forgiveness but from acceptance. The realization that some people only learn through absence, not presence. Inside the hall the music stuttered. I could hear it faintly, the DJ's confusion bleeding into static. Then the sound stopped completely. For a moment there was only silence. Then came the murmurs, rising voices, the shifting tone of celebration turning sour. I didn't have to see it. I could picture every second. I imagined Marcus's voice trying to keep calm. It's fine, we'll figure it out. Always the politician. The crowd's confusion, the bride's mother's hand tightening on her pearls, the questions piling like storm clouds ready to burst. They would start looking for someone to blame. The calls would come. But I'd already turned my phone face down on the seat. I started the engine, letting the soft rumble drown out the chaos behind me. My headlights stretched across the empty road like a path carved just for me. I didn't drive away right away, though. I sat there, hands on the wheel, eyes on the hall, watching the glow from the windows flicker as people began to scatter. The storm had started quiet, but sure. I thought of Evelyn then, her laughter, her faith and patience. She would have said, "Daniel, don't let bitterness eat your soul." And I would have answered, "It's not bitterness, sweetheart. It's balance." Because that's what tonight was, a reckoning. A correction of a world that had gotten too comfortable forgetting who built it. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. Another buzz. Then a call. Marcus. I let it ring out. Then a message appeared. "Dad, what happened? The bar's closed. They said you canceled everything. Please, just talk to me." For a moment my chest ached, not with regret, but with memory. The little boy who used to run into my arms was gone. The man at that wedding had buried him, and I'd simply returned the favor. I typed back one sentence. "Actions have echoes, son. You're just hearing yours." Then I locked the phone and placed it face down again. The rain finally came, soft at first, tapping against the windshield like a lullaby. The kind of rain Evelyn loved, steady, cleansing. I watched the droplets race down the glass, each one reflecting the faint lights of the hall. Behind that building, my son's new world was cracking, not with anger, but with the quiet realization that power doesn't come from inheritance. It comes from integrity. I shifted the truck into drive and rolled forward, slow and unhurried. The road stretched ahead, slick and dark, but it was mine. All mine. By the time I reached the stop sign at the end of the road, I could see people spilling out of the hall, Their voices raised umbrellas opening in the rain. Someone was yelling. Someone else was crying. And there, right at the edge of it all, stood Marcus, soot-soaked, phone to his ear, looking out into the darkness like he might see me. He wouldn't. Not tonight. I watched him once, just once, before turning the wheel. The rain washed everything clean. The road, the truck, the weight on my chest. I drove off without looking back, the sound of thunder rolling low behind me. The storm had found its rhythm, and for the first time in years, so had I. When I got home, the rain had already softened into mist hanging low over the streetlights like smoke that refused to rise. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that breathes alive, waiting. I left my jacket on the chair by the door, kicked off my shoes, and walked straight to the living room. The clock on the wall ticked too loud, its rhythm steady as a heartbeat. It was the same sound that had filled this house for decades, long before tonight, long before betrayal. I sat down, the old couch creaking beneath me, and exhaled for what felt like the first time all night. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. The storm had done its work. The rage was gone, replaced by something else, an emptiness that didn't hurt, just existed. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, and let my eyes wander to the bookshelf in the corner. Evelyn's shelf. Her keepsakes. The things she'd never let me throw away, no matter how cluttered they made the room. Old hymnals, a chipped mug from her choir days, faded photographs from vacations we could barely afford, but took anyway. And at the bottom, her drawer, the one she used to keep locked. I don't know what made me open it that night. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was her. The lock had long since broken, so it opened easily with a soft creak. Inside, everything was neatly folded just as she'd left it. Her church program from the last service she attended, a dried rose from our anniversary, a stack of letters tied with a piece of blue ribbon. My hands hesitated over them for a second before I untied the knot. The first few letters were what I expected, lists of grocery reminders, old love notes, her handwriting looping across the page like music. But the last one, the one at the very bottom, had my name written on it in smaller, tighter script. For Daniel, when you're ready. The paper had yellowed edges curled. My chest tightened. I sat back, the envelope trembling in my hand, and carefully opened it. Her voice came alive in my head as I read. My love, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. I pray the Lord gave me the courage to tell you in person, but if I didn't, it means I couldn't bear to break your heart twice. I stopped there, blinking hard, the words blurring. The rain tapped against the window like it was keeping time. I took a breath and kept reading. You've been a good man. Better than I ever deserved. You raised Marcus with a patience and love that went beyond duty. But there's something you never knew. Marcus isn't your blood, Daniel. He's mine, but not yours. He came from a mistake I made before we were married, one I carried in silence because I was afraid. But every day you loved him, every lesson you taught him, every prayer you said over him, you became more his father than the man who gave him life ever was. The words didn't hit me all at once. They came in waves. First confusion, then disbelief, then the slow burn of understanding. I sat there staring at the letter, my mind replaying every moment of his childhood like scenes from a film. The first time he called me Daddy. The day I taught him how to tie his shoes. The nights I stayed up late helping him with math homework, his small voice saying, "Don't give up on me, Pops." And now I realized I hadn't been raising my son. I'd been raising Evelyn's secret. For a long time I didn't move. The rain outside grew heavier again, a steady hum against the roof. I looked around the room and saw her everywhere. The family photos on the wall, the scent of her favorite candles still faint in the air. She'd kept this truth buried all these years, not out of cruelty but out of fear. And somehow that truth didn't destroy me. It steadied me. Because for the first time in my life, everything made sense. Marcus's distance, his need to reinvent himself. That feeling I'd never quite been able to name, the invisible wall between us even when we were close. It wasn't just pride or ambition, it was something deeper. He'd felt the truth his whole life, even if no one ever said it aloud. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back inside the envelope. My hands were steady again, my pulse calm. I wasn't broken. I wasn't even angry. The truth had burned away everything but clarity. Blood didn't make me a father. Love did. Sacrifice did. And respect, the one thing he'd taken for granted, was what truly bound us. I stood and walked to the hallway where the family portraits lined the wall. Marcus as a baby laughing in Evelyn's arms. Marcus at 10 grinning beside me with his first fishing rod. Marcus at graduation wearing my tie. I traced my finger along the glass of each frame, then stopped at the last one, Evelyn and me on our wedding day. She was smiling the way she always did when she was hiding something a little too bright, a little too brave. I whispered, "You should have told me, Evie." The words came out soft, without bitterness. Because I understood now. She hadn't lied to protect herself. She'd lied to protect the family we built. The phone buzzed again on the table. Marcus. Another text. "Dad, please. Let's talk." I looked at it for a long moment, then turned it over so the screen faced the wood. Not yet. Not tonight. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of whiskey, and sat by the window. The storm had passed, leaving the street slick and quiet. The moonlight broke through the clouds, pale and clean. I took a sip, the burn steady grounding. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel angry, betrayed, or alone. I felt free. The truth hadn't chained me, it had released me. All those years I thought I was living for Marcus, I was really living for Evelyn's promise, her secret hope that I could love a child as my own without needing proof. And I had. I looked out at the night, the reflection of my house glowing faintly in the window. This place wasn't built on lies, it was built on love strong enough to survive them. That was my legacy. Not blood, not money, not even forgiveness. Respect. I raised the glass slightly, a quiet toast to the woman who'd built her faith on silence, and to the man who finally found peace in truth. The whiskey shimmered in the moonlight. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled one last time before the sky cleared completely. Tomorrow I would face Marcus. Not as the father he rejected, but as the man who raised him, who chose him even before he knew the truth. And when that moment came, I'd tell him one thing Evelyn never could. Love doesn't need blood. It just needs to be remembered. I woke up the next morning to sunlight spilling through the blinds, sharp and golden. The rain had washed everything clean, the porch, the driveway, even the weight sitting on my chest. The house felt different, lighter. For the first time in months, maybe years, it wasn't haunted by disappointment. It breathed again. I made a pot of coffee, strong and black, and watched the steam curl up from the mug like it was drawing prayers into the air. My hands felt steady, my mind clear. The storm inside me had passed, and what remained was quiet, a kind of peace that doesn't announce itself. It just settles and stays. That morning, I opened the back door and let the air in. The grass was still wet, the neighborhood still half asleep. Somewhere down the block, a radio played an old Sam Cooke song, soft and sweet. I stood there for a long while, breathing in the smell of damp earth and magnolia, thinking about how silence can be sacred when it isn't filled with shame. I'd spent so many years waiting for acknowledgement, waiting to be seen by the boy I raised by a world that only claps for you when you're standing in the light. But I was done waiting. I picked up the phone and started dialing, not to confront, not to argue, but to reconnect. I called people who'd been part of my life long before Marcus forgot my name. Folks who'd shown up when I was broke, grieving, or just plain lonely. People who remembered Evelyn's laugh, who'd seen this house when it was still filled with music. Brother Carter. Sister Louise answered, her voice carrying that Sunday warmth that could make you believe in better days. "We missed you last week." I smiled, something easy and real. "You free this Sunday, Sister Louise? I'm cooking supper." There was a pause, then her laugh filled the line. "If you're cooking, I'll be there early." Next I called Mr. Harris, my neighbor for over 20 years. The man never stopped mowing his lawn, even in July heat. When I told him I was putting together a Sunday table, he didn't hesitate. "I'll bring the sweet tea," he said. "The good kind, the one my wife used to make before her sugar got bad." By noon, the plan was set. Not a party, not a performance, just supper. Real, honest, simple. That Sunday, I pulled out Evelyn's cast-iron skillet and her favorite apron, the one with "Bless This Kitchen" stitched across the front. I fried chicken slow just the way she taught me, with the oil popping like applause from heaven. The smell filled the house rich and warm, carrying memories that didn't hurt anymore. On the counter, I set out cornbread, collard greens, and a bowl of potato salad so big it could feed a small army. When the doorbell rang, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: anticipation without dread. Mr. Harris came first, holding a pitcher of sweet tea in one hand and a grin that reached his eyes. Behind him, Sister Louise carried a peach cobbler covered in foil, her voice humming a tune from church. Then came the Robinsons from 2 doors down, and old Deacon Jones, still walking slow but steady with his cane. We gathered around the table like we used to in the old days, saying grace before eating. I bowed my head, listening to their voices rise in prayer, the rhythm of their amens blending like harmony. For a moment I could almost see Evelyn sitting across from me, her hands folded, her eyes soft with pride. We laughed that night, not the polite kind of laughter you give strangers, but the full-bodied kind that shakes your shoulders and loosens the soul. Mr. Harris told stories about his Navy days. Sister Louise teased him for bragging too much, and I sat there watching them, realizing that family doesn't always share your name or your blood, it shares your table. I looked around at those faces lined with years glowing under the soft light, and something inside me healed in real time. Every "how you been" and "past the greens" felt like a thread stitching me back together. I didn't need Marcus's approval. I didn't need a stage or a toast. I had something purer belonging. At one point, Sister Louise reached over and touched my hand. "You know," she said, "Evelyn would be proud of you, Daniel. You kept the light on." Her words caught me off guard. I hadn't thought of it that way before. I'd spent so much time thinking about what I'd lost that I forgot what I'd kept: the faith Evelyn left behind, the home we built, the ability to still break bread with love. I squeezed her hand and nodded. "Maybe she's the one keeping it lit," I said, and everyone fell quiet for a moment, like we were all thinking the same thing. After dinner, we sat on the porch with glasses of tea, watching the sun dip low behind the trees. The air was thick with the hum of cicadas and the smell of jasmine from the fence line. Mr. Harris leaned back in his chair and said, "This right here, this is what folks forget. The small things, the good things." He was right. For years I'd been chasing big gestures, recognition, legacy, some grand idea of justice. But life's redemption hides in small moments like this: laughter on a porch, the clink of ice in a glass, the sound of your name spoken kindly. When they left that night, the house stayed warm. I walked through the kitchen, cleaning plates, humming a tune under my breath. My reflection in the window caught my eye, and for once I didn't see the tired man who'd been erased. I saw the man who'd chosen himself again. Before bed, I stepped outside one last time. The air was cool, the moon bright, the world still. I could hear the faint music drifting from somewhere down the street, a gospel song about finding home again. I leaned against the porch rail, breathing it in, feeling the rhythm of the words deep in my chest. I wasn't waiting to be seen anymore. I wasn't chasing what had already left. I'd built something new out of what remained, something quieter but stronger. And maybe that's what legacy really is. Not the name you pass down, but the piece you leave behind. Inside, the clock ticked softly. I turned off the lights, leaving only the lamp by the window glowing the way Evelyn used to when Marcus stayed out late. I smiled to myself, a slow, steady smile that came from somewhere true. Tomorrow would come, and maybe my son would too. But if he didn't, I'd still be here with supper on the stove and laughter waiting to fill the walls again. Because family, I'd learned, isn't something you're born into. It's something you make one Sunday night at a time. It was a week after the wedding when I heard the sound of tires crunching up my gravel driveway. I was out on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun sink low behind the magnolia trees. The air was warm, the kind that hums with cicadas in memory. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Some silences carry names, and this one whispered my son's. Marcus stepped out of his car wearing the same suit jacket from the wedding, but the shine had faded. His shoulders slumped in a way I hadn't seen since he was a boy trying to explain a broken window. He hesitated at the gate like he wasn't sure if he still had permission to walk through. I didn't move, didn't wave him in. I just sipped my coffee and waited. He finally made his way up the steps, each footfall careful, heavy. "Dad," he said quietly, his voice softer than I remembered. "Can we talk?" I nodded once. "You're talking." He looked down, running a hand through his hair the way he used to when he was nervous. "I don't understand why you did it. The brunch, the band. Everything, you embarrassed me." His voice cracked on that last word. I leaned back in my chair, letting the wood creak beneath me. "No, son. I reminded you." He frowned. "Reminded me of what?" "That everything you built started with me and your mama. The hands that fed you. The prayers that covered you. The roof that kept you dry when the world didn't care who you were." He opened his mouth and closed it again. The guilt in his eyes was heavy, real. I could see the fight leave him as he sank into the porch chair across from me. The silence between us stretched thick but not bitter. Finally he said, "I guess I forgot what you taught me." I looked at him long and hard. "You didn't forget, Marcus. You just thought you'd outgrown it." The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of rain from somewhere far off. For a moment it was just the two of us, and the quiet hum of evening. He stared at his hands, the same hands that once clung to my shirt when he was little, afraid of thunderstorms. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said finally. "I just wanted to be my own man." "You could have been," I said. "But a man who forgets his roots is just a leaf waiting to dry out and fall." He flinched a little, but didn't argue. The truth has a way of landing where it needs to. "I gave you everything I had." I continued, my voice calm but steady. "Not for payback, not for praise. Just respect. That's all a father asks for." He nodded slowly, tears beginning to gather at the corners of his eyes. "I don't know how to fix this." I took a deep breath, feeling something inside me loosen. "You don't. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be understood." For the first time he looked at me, not past me, not through me, but at me. That boy I raised, the one I prayed over every night, flickered back into his eyes. It was enough. I stood up, finished the last of my coffee, and said, "I've got people coming over soon. You take care of yourself." He rose too, looking like he wanted to say more, but the words never came. I reached for the screen door and paused. "You're always welcome here, Marcus. But next time, come as a man, not a shadow." Then I stepped inside and closed the door. Not in anger, not to shut him out, but to let him find his own way back in. The house was warm with life again. The smell of baked cornbread drifted from the kitchen, and gospel music played low from the old radio, Mahalia Jackson's voice rolling through the walls like a blessing. My Sunday table was already set. Sister Louise had arrived early, fussing over the greens, and Mr. Harris was pouring tea like he'd lived here his whole life. When I walked into the dining room, everyone looked up. "You all right, Brother Carter?" Louise asked. I smiled, a small, peaceful kind of smile. More than all right. We joined hands around the table, the air thick with warmth and forgiveness. The prayer flowed easy this time. No weight, no pretense. Just gratitude for what had been lost, for what remained, and for what could still be found. After the amen, laughter filled the room again, rich and full. Mr. Harris told a joke about his lawnmower that made Louise slap the table, nearly spilling her tea. I cut into the cornbread, the butter melting into golden crumbs, and passed the plate around. Every sound, the clatter of forks, the murmur of voices, the faint hum of gospel felt like a hymn of its own. As I looked around, I realized something simple but profound. I wasn't standing in anyone's kitchen anymore. I wasn't waiting for permission to belong. I was at the head of my own table, surrounded by people who saw me, who knew me, who respected me without question. Outside, the sun dipped below the trees, casting long amber light across the room. It hit the photograph of Evelyn on the mantel, and for a moment it was like she was there, smiling proud, her eyes saying, "You did good, Daniel." I raised my glass, the ice clinking softly. "To family," I said. "The kind you build with love, not blood." They echoed it back, voices, overlapping laughter following close behind. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone on the porch again, the crickets singing their midnight chorus. I thought about Marcus, about the way his voice trembled, about the apology sitting behind his silence. I didn't know if he'd come back, but I wasn't waiting anymore. I'd found something bigger than forgiveness, freedom. The kind that doesn't depend on anyone else's acknowledgement. The kind that lives in peace, in purpose, in the simple act of reclaiming your own name. The night air was soft against my skin, carrying the faint echo of laughter from earlier. I leaned back in my chair, let the world hum around me, and smiled. Legacy, I realized, isn't about what you pass down, it's about what you stand up for. And tonight I was standing tall. Life has a way of teaching us that respect, not blood, is what truly defines family. Sometimes the people we raise forget where they came from, and the hardest thing we'll ever do is let them learn that lesson on their own. But peace doesn't come from being seen. It comes from knowing your worth even when others don't. Age teaches us that silence can be power, forgiveness can be freedom, and walking away with dignity is its own kind of victory. True family are the ones who break bread with you, laugh with you, and remember your kindness without needing to be reminded. You don't owe the world your pain, you owe yourself peace. If you've ever been overlooked, dismissed, or forgotten after giving your all, remember this: your story isn't over. When they walk away, it begins when you choose yourself again. Subscribe for more powerful revenge stories where wisdom, dignity, and justice always find their way home.